One question that comes up a lot in all the classes that I give, both online and in person, is orbs. What kind of orbs should we use? Big orbs, small orbs? What are we supposed to do? So I'm going to tell you how I do it, which is not to say that this is what everyone does, but it's what I've found to be a really good guideline to, my practice. And I tend to prefer slightly smaller orbs for the most part, but there are a couple of exceptions. So generally speaking, I work with about a 5-degree orb, but I do modify that a little bit if the aspect is applying or separating. And that might be a slightly technical piece, but if you're familiar with the idea of a faster planet moving towards a slower planet, that's kind of what I mean here. In any aspect combination, we have two planets coming together, and one of those planets will be moving faster than the other one. So part of working out the best orb to use often involves understanding what the movement component is between the two planets that are actually forming the aspect. So that can be a little bit technical, but it will help you do much better work with your aspect work. So generally speaking, I'd use about a 5-degree orb, especially if, say, Venus is moving into a square with Saturn. Venus moves much faster than Saturn. She moves relatively quickly, about 1 degree a day. So a 4 or 5-degree orb feels appropriate for an applying aspect. But for a separating aspect, I might use a slightly smaller orb, because in a separating aspect, that tells us that the faster moving planet has already engaged with the slower moving planet and is now starting to pull away. And the best way to think about aspects is to think about the different people that you might encounter at a party or at a work event. And if you move towards someone, that's like you're applying to aspect them. And if you've had your conversation and you're starting to walk away, perhaps go and talk to someone else, or maybe you're actually walking away to leave, that's like a separating aspect. So when you're walking away from that person, you've already engaged with them and the energy levels are a lot lower to start with. And that's why I would use a smaller orb for a separating aspect. So to be really clear, I tend to start with a guideline of about a 5-degree orb for an applying aspect. And that would be for an applying aspect where we've got Mercury, Venus, Mars applying to the slower moving planet. I might use a smaller orb, maybe 3 or 4 degrees, if Jupiter or Saturn are the faster moving planet, because they do move a bit slower, so they're going to take longer to cover that territory. The two exceptions are for aspects involving the Sun and aspects involving the Moon. I'll start with the Moon first, because that's a little more simple. The Moon is the fastest moving planet. Any aspect involving the Moon, the faster planet is going to be the Moon. The Moon can move up to about 13 or 14 degrees over a 24-hour period. In fact, if she's going really fast, she'll cover 15 degrees over the course of a day. But her average movement is about 13 degrees a day. And that would be about the orb that I would use for the Moon, especially if she was applying to aspect another planet. And the reason for that is she's going to cover that territory in just a few hours. So 10 to 13 degrees orb for the Moon applying to make an aspect is appropriate. And if you're really looking, if you're doing birth chart work and you're looking for the juiciest, most impactful aspects, tighter orb aspects are always going to be the key. So for a separating aspect with the Moon, I might look at about 7 or 8 degrees. Even though the textbooks tell me I can go longer, I tend to find keeping it a bit shorter on the separation is relevant. Now, the Sun is its own other kettle of fish altogether. And when planets come near the Sun, they actually go through this whole process that involves them becoming invisible, going through a purification process, and then being reborn. So when planets are coming near the Sun, there are sort of 2 orbs that are important. One is about a 15-degree orb, and that's the orb of invisibility, if you like. So 15 degrees applying or separating to the Sun tells us that a planet is in a really special condition or state. And then the other orb for the Sun is about 8 degrees applying or separating, and that's a heightened or even more intense period of purification and intensification. The Sun aspects are a little bit more technical because they do create some special conditions known as cazimi and combustion, and I cover those in a webinar that we'll link to in the notes below. So generally speaking, aspects in the birth chart with the Sun, you might use that 5 to 7 degree orb if you're looking for personality information, and you could probably use that applying, and again maybe a little bit shorter for a separating aspect, perhaps 3 to 5 degrees. But do keep in mind that aspects to the sun are their own special kind of beast and do need some particular attention. But as a working guideline, do keep in mind the tighter orbs that you're working with, the more impactful, the more powerful, the stronger energetic aspects you'll be identifying. Good luck with that.